Before we begin, this story isn't about a battle. There's no dramatic last stand, no heroic charge. It's about a moment of realization, a moment when captured German soldiers stopped laughing and understood the war was already lost. If you enjoy deeply researched, cinematic World War II stories told from the ground-level stories that show how wars are really decided, welcome to Operation History. Subscribe and stay with us as we step back into the past. Now, June 14th, 1944. A hedge-lined road outside Carentan, Normandy. The morning air smells of crushed leaves, hot oil, cordite that hasn't yet settled into the soil. Dew still clings to the grass, but the road is already awake. Engines idle. Clutches chatter. Somewhere down the line, a truck backfires like a rifle shot. Unteroffizier Karl Fischer stands with his hands locked behind his head, steel helmet gone. Field cap shoved into his belt. Mud cakes the knees of his trousers. His MP40 lies 10 meters away in the ditch where an American paratrooper kicked it, casually. As if it were a broken tool, Fischer squints at the road. A truck rolls past, then another, then another. They come in a steady, unbroken line, olive drab, canvas stopped. White stars stenciled on hoods still clean enough to shine. GMCCCKW Sanderhalfs. 3-axle beasts with whining transmissions, and tires thick as a man's torso, each one loaded high, crates of ammunition, fuel, drums, rations. Engineer gear, bridging equipment. The drivers sit relaxed, cigarettes dangling, helmets pushed back. Some wave. Fischer laughs. A short, dry sound. He turns his head toward the other prisoners, about 30 men from the remnants of a grenadier battalion smashed days earlier, when the Americans took the causeway into Carentan. Last wagon, he mutters. Trucks, always. Trucks. Gefreiter Otterbrandt snorts beside him. An army of shopkeepers, he says. They admit it. Openly. The Americans don't react. A sergeant from the 101st Airborne Staff, Sergeant James Red Mallory, stands nearby, with a Thompson slung low, chewing gum, eyes half on the prisoners, half on the road. He has been standing there since dawn, directing traffic with one arm and guarding Germans with the other. Another convoy rumbles through. The ground trembles faintly under their boots. Brandt shakes his head, amused. This is why they will never fight like us, he says. Too many vehicles. Too much fuel. One good artillery strike and this entire circus burns. Fischer nods. He has said the same thing for years. At training depots, in letters home, in half-drunken arguments over black bread and thin beer. The German army, he believes, wins wars with discipline and movement marching columns. Rail timetables, precision. Trucks are useful, yes, but only in moderation. Too many, and an army becomes soft, dependent, wasteful. Another truck passes, then another, then a fuel tanker, its silver belly smeared with mud, followed by a wrecker towing a damaged jeep, followed by a mobile field kitchen that smells unmistakably like fresh coffee. Brandt notices it too. He falls quiet. Mallory glances at the prisoners, then at the road. He's been watching this stream for hours. He knows the schedule by heart now. He knows that this isn't even the main supply route, just a feeder road feeding a bigger artery further west. Somewhere behind these trucks are ships, hundreds of them. Somewhere behind the ships are factories that never saw a bomb crater. Somewhere behind the factories are rail yards stacked with steel and rubber and fuel measured not in liters, but in days of uninterrupted flow. Another convoy appears at the bend. Fischer's smile fades. He counts without meaning to. 10 trucks, 20, 30. They don't bunch up. They don't stall. When one slows, the next adjusts as if the whole column breathes together. Military police motorcycles weave through, keeping spacing exact. A Dodge WC ambulance passes. Spotless? Red crosses bright against the green. Brandt swallows. They are not stopping. He says, no. Fischer replies. He looks up and down the road now, really looks. There are no shell craters. No burned-out hulks. No signs of hurried repair. The hedgerows are intact. The road surface is firm, dry, unmarred by bombing. This road has been captured whole, and they are using it immediately. Mallory shifts his weight, Hell of a parade, huh? He says, almost to himself. Fisher understands enough English to catch the tone. Not boasting, not mocking, just fact. Another truck passes, and another. Some of the prisoners stop watching the Americans altogether and stare only at the road, as if trying to find its end. They don't. The laughter dies, replaced by something heavier. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. Fisher thinks of German columns in Russia stalled for lack of fuel, of horses collapsing in the snow, of rail lines twisted by bombers repaired at night, destroyed again by morning. He looks at the American trucks and realizes slowly, unwillingly, that this is not excess. This is doctrine. This is how a war is decided. The convoy keeps coming. The convoy does not slow as noon approaches. If anything, it thickens. By midday, the road outside Carentan has become something closer to a river than a route flowing, regulated. Impossible to dam. Without effort measured in air power and artillery, Germany no longer possesses here. Fisher feels it in his chest, a dull pressure each time another load-bearing axle thumps past. A Feldwebel from his unit Hermann Weiss, older, Stoop leans forward as much as his bound hands allow. His eyes are narrow, calculating. How far back do you think it goes? He asks quietly. Brandt shrugs the beach. Weiss shakes his head. No, further. An American corporal jogs past, with a clipboard, shouting times and unit numbers to a jeep driver. The jeep pulls off without blocking traffic. Everything flows around it. No shouting, no confusion, no frantic improvisation. This is not the chaos Fisher expected from an army that relies on machines. Mallory barks an order to a pair of engineers unloading steel planking from a truck bed. They move with speed but not haste. Another truck pulls in behind them before the first is even half empty. Fisher remembers something his instructor once said back at Debrecen. An army marches on its stomach, but it fights with its soul. At the time, it sounded wise. Now it sounds incomplete. A pair of American MPs walk the prisoner line, checking restraints. One of them young, freckles. Helmet to big stops near Fisher. You guys hungry? He asks. Brandt scoffs before Fisher can. Stop him! Always thinking of food, he mutters in German. The MP doesn't understand the words, but he understands the tone. He grins anyway. Chow truck'll be here soon, he says, jerking a thumb toward the road. Hot stuff. Fisher watches him go, then looks back at the convoy, a chow truck. Not a field kitchen cobbled together behind the lines. A truck designed, built, shipped and driven here for the sole purpose of feeding men on schedule. He feels a flicker of irritation, then something colder. Across the road, an American officer steps out of a staff car. Captain's bars, clean uniform, map case tucked under. His arm. He doesn't look at the prisoners at all. His attention is on a junction ahead, where another stream of trucks peels off toward the west. He raises a hand. Signals are exchanged. The flow adjusts. Fisher suddenly understands something that months of briefings never conveyed. The Americans are not reacting to the battlefield. They are shaping it. Brandt shifts uneasily. If they need all this just to move forward, he says, forcing a laugh. Imagine how much breaks down. Weiss answers before Fisher can. Nothing, he says flatly. Or when it does, another replaces it, as if summoned by the words. A disabled truck appears rear axle damaged, canvas torn. Before it can stall traffic, an American wrecker hooks on winches tight, pulls it aside with practiced ease. Traffic never stops, not once. Fisher remembers the winter of '42 outside Vyazma. A single broken-down fuel truck had halted their battalion for 6 hours while officers argued over responsibility. No spare parts, no recovery vehicle, just cold and curses. Here, recovery is assumed. The soundscape changes as the afternoon wears on. The whine of engines blends into a constant hum. Dust hangs low, coating boots and trousers, but the Americans wear it like a uniform unbothered, temporary. A group of U.S. infantry marches past the trucks, rifles slung, boots clean. They are not exhausted. They are not starving. They glance at the prisoners with mild curiosity, not hatred. Brandt's voice drops. They haven't even committed their main force yet, he says. Fisher doesn't answer. He is thinking of maps, of arrows drawn in red and blue, of the German obsession with decisive battles, Kesselschlachten, encirclements, annihilation. All of it assumes the enemy eventually runs out of something. Men, fuel, time. But what if he doesn't? A new convoy rolls through tank transporters this time. Sherman tanks, olive and angular, chained down in pairs, fresh paint. No battle scars. Weiss exhales slowly. They are bringing tomorrow. With them, he says, Mallory overhears this one. He pauses, looks at the old Feldwebel. For a moment, there's something like respect in his eyes. Yeah, he says, we don't like being late. The prisoners fall silent. The laughter from the morning feels obscene now, like a joke told at the wrong funeral. Fisher stares at the road and realizes that this endless movement is not just supplied his inevitability made visible. Germany can still fight, but it cannot match. This, not in weeks, not in months, not ever. The trucks keep coming. By late afternoon, the sky over Normandy has taken on a dull, metallic sheen. High clouds drift in from the west, flattening the light, muting shadows. The road, however, never dims. The convoy continues as if powered by something deeper than fuel. The prisoners are moved off the shoulder and herded into a shallow orchard, apple trees scarred by shrapnel, their fruit knocked half-ripe into the grass. From here, Fisher can still see the road through the gaps in the trunks. The trucks pass in fragments now, a grill here, a spinning wheel there, canvas flapping like sails. Brandt sits heavily against a tree, exhaustion finally catching him. They said this would be their weakness, he mutters, their dependence on machines. Fisher nods absently. He remembers the lectures in 41, before Barbarossa. American industry described as chaotic, civilian, inefficient. They make refrigerators, not war, the instructors had said. A refrigerator hums. So does a truck. So does a factory. Across the orchard, an American logistics officer spreads a map on the hood of a Jeep. He is young too young for the com he carries. A lieutenant, maybe 24. He points, speaks briefly, folds the map, and the Jeep is gone. Orders disseminated not by shouting runners, but by movement already planned. Fisher watches and thinks of German supply columns stretched thin across Europe, tied to rail lines that Allied bombers cut at will. He thinks of horse-drawn wagons, of fuel counted in barrels, of replacement parts that never arrived. A prisoner near the back of the group, a radio operator named Klaus Richter, leans forward. In Russia, he says quietly, we captured a warehouse near Smolensk. Enough supplies for months, but no way to move them. No. One replies, the implication hangs there heavy. The Americans, Fisher realizes, would have moved them. Not tomorrow, not next week. That afternoon, a field kitchen truck finally pulls off near the orchard. Soldiers line up. Lids come off pots. Steam rises. The smell hits the prisoners like a physical blow. Meat, onions, coffee, real coffee. Not ersatz, not thin. Brandt closes his eyes. They eat better at the front than we did in Paris, he says. Fisher doesn't correct him. He's watching the serving line. There is no rush, no panic. The men know there will be enough. A sound rolls overhead low, distant, growing. Aircraft. Fisher looks up instinctively, shoulders tensing. American fighters P-47 Thunderbolts roar eastward in loose formation. Silver bellies flashing. They don't circle. They don't linger. They pass like punctuation. The trucks do not stop for them. They never do. Weiss speaks again, his voice barely above a whisper. This is not an army advancing, he says. This is an economy moving forward. The words land with finality. Fisher feels something inside him give way, not hope, not loyalty, but illusion. He has believed, stubbornly, that Germany could still force a decision. That discipline and sacrifice could compensate for shortages. That willpower mattered more than steel. But willpower does not fuel engines. It does not replace tires. It does not pave roads overnight, or produce 10,000 identical vehicles that can be repaired anywhere by anyone with the right manual. The sun begins to drop. The light turns amber. The convoys continue. Somewhere far to the rear, beyond the horizon, ships unload more trucks. Somewhere even farther, assembly lines stamp parts without pause. Somewhere, clerks mark inventories that do not run out. Fisher exhales, long and slow. This is when we lost, he says, not to the Americans, not to his fellow prisoners, but to himself. Not at Stalingrad, not at Kursk. Here, on a quiet Norman road, watching an enemy who does not need to hurry. The laughter is gone now, replaced by a sober understanding shared by men who once believed victory was a matter of courage. Alone, the road hums on. Night comes slowly, almost politely. The sky darkens in layers, but the road refuses to sleep. Headlights snap on in disciplined sequence, each truck maintaining its interval as if guided by an invisible ruler. Blackout slits reduce the beams to narrow bands of light, yet the convoys lose neither speed nor cohesion. The rhythm continues engine, axle, canvas. Engine steady as a metronome. Fisher watches from the orchard, his eyes aching. He has not slept properly in days, but exhaustion cannot compete with what he is seeing. This is not desperation logistics, not a final push fueled by urgency. This is routine. Mallory and another sergeant walk the prisoner line again, checking counts. Mallory pauses near Fisher. "You fellas picked a hell of a time to quit," he says, not unkindly. Fisher meets his eyes. For the first time, he answers in English. "We did not know," he says. Mallory considers this, then nods once. "Yeah," he replies. "A lot of folks didn't." A new sound rises in the distance, heavy engines, slower, deeper. Tracked vehicles, tank transporters again, this time followed by recovery vehicles and mobile workshops. Mechanics ride in the back, tools already in hand. Branch shakes his head in disbelief. They repair them before they break, he says. Weiss allows himself a thin smile. No, he corrects. They assume they will. A truck pulls off the road near the orchard and unfolds into something resembling a small factory generator's humming. Floodlights bathing the area in harsh white. Within minutes, a damaged half-track is jacked up, parts swapped with practiced speed. No shouting, no confusion. Fisher remembers German mechanics scavenging wrecks for usable bolts, working by lantern light under shell fire. He remembers officers arguing over priority while vehicles sat immobile. Here, priority has already been decided. As darkness deepens, the prisoners are given water. Tin cups filled from a tank truck that looks as if it has never known scarcity. Fisher drinks slowly, savoring the taste. It is clean, cold. The convoy continues. At some point, Fisher realizes something else, something quieter, more unsettling. The Americans are not pushing themselves. They are not exhausted. They are not racing a clock. They can afford time. Time to rotate units. Time to rest drivers. Time to stockpile supplies before advancing again. Time to wait for air cover, artillery, reinforcements. Time to make mistakes and correct them. Germany, he knows, has none of this left. A distant rumble rolls across the horizon, artillery far away. The trucks do not react. This road is already secured, already fed, already absorbed into the machine. Brandt speaks again, his voice hollow. Even if we stop them here, he says, they would just go around. Fisher nods or wait. That is the difference. Waiting is a luxury of strength. As midnight approaches, the orchard glows intermittently from passing headlights. The prisoners sit in silence now, each man alone with the same realization. The war they trained for of decisive battles and heroic breakthroughs has been overtaken by something larger, quieter, and unstoppable. An American radio crackles nearby. Voices exchange coordinates, delivery times, confirmations. Everything accounted for. The road hums on, indifferent to belief or ideology. Somewhere in the dark, Fisher finally understands that Germany did not lose because it lacked brave soldiers. It lost because it could not build, move, and sustain this, and no amount of courage could change that. Dawn returns quietly, as if unwilling to interrupt the work. A pale grey light seeps into the orchard, revealing men stiff from cold and sleeplessness. Fisher's back aches. Where he leaned against the tree all night, When he shifts, dew-soaked grass darkens his trousers. He barely notices the road is still alive. Fresh convoys roll through, their vehicles cleaner than the ones from the night before. These have not yet tasted dust or shell fire. The white stars are crisp. The drivers look rested. Some have shaved. Brant watches them pass and lets out a breath that is half laugh, half surrender. They replace them, he says, the entire night. Weiss nods. Rotated drivers, he adds. Fresh fuel. New schedules. An American lieutenant approaches with a clipboard, flanked by two MPs. He stops in front of the prisoners and begins calling names from captured documents. His pronunciation is rough but careful. He treats each man like an entry in a system that expects him. Fisher answers when his name is called. The lieutenant checks a box and moves on. Even captivity, Fisher realizes, has been organized, as the prisoners are marched toward a temporary holding area, a wire enclosure nearer. Crossroads, the road remains in sight. They are never allowed to forget it. Trucks pass close enough that Fisher can read serial numbers. Unit markings, chalked destinations on tailgates, ammo, 3rd Armored, fuel, forward depot, bridges, engineers, destinations written in advance, certainty in chalk. A young American private walks alongside the column, rifle at his shoulder. He glances at Fisher. You guys really thought the trucks were funny? He asks, genuinely curious. Fisher hesitates, then answers honestly, yes. The private nods, considering this. Guess that makes sense. He says, we think it's funny you guys still use horses. Brant hears this and winces, not in anger, but in agreement. The holding area is little more than wire and stakes, but it has water, shade, and medical orderlies already at work. A Red Cross truck pulls up within minutes of their arrival. Fisher sits on the ground and watches as wounded men, German and American, are treated side by side. Bandages come out of crates that seem bottomless. He thinks back to the first hours of capture, to the laughter, the mocking certainty that American excess would collapse under its own weight. Instead, it has rolled forward, mile by mile, hour by hour, without pause. A new convoy passes, this one marked for rail repair units. Flatbed, cars, prefabricated track sections, cranes mounted on trucks. The Americans are not just advancing, they are rebuilding behind themselves. Weiss closes his eyes. Even if the Führer himself were here, he says softly, he could not argue with this. Fisher does not respond. There is nothing left to argue. The realization settles fully now, complete and inescapable. The war was decided long before this road, long before Normandy, long before these trucks rolled past laughing prisoners. It was decided in factories, in shipping schedules, in doctrine that valued movement as much as firepower. This road was simply where Fisher saw it, a place where belief finally met reality. He looks once more at the endless stream of vehicles and feels no anger, only clarity. The laughter is gone, replaced by a quiet understanding that will follow him into captivity and beyond. The trucks roll on, and long after the guns fell silent, men like Carl Fisher would remember this road not for a battle fought on it, but for the truth it revealed, that wars are not only won by courage or sacrifice, but by the ability to build, move, and endure without stopping. If this story gave you a new perspective on World War II, support Operation History by liking the video, sharing it with others, and leaving a comment below. And if you want more ground-level, cinematic war stories that go beyond dates and maps, subscribe to the channel. History doesn't end. When the fighting stops, it keeps moving just like the trucks.